Hey everyone, this is Sonia Baschez for the Meme Team podcast, where we dissect the marketing strategies creating breakout cultural moments. My guest this week is Nic Allum, founder and CEO of Cultureland, a cultural strategy consultancy based here in LA. Hey Nic, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sonia. Great to be here.
Awesome. So we've got a few topics that we'll discuss later, but I really wanted to touch on this friend ad that dropped last week. It was basically a user, customer story, which, it's funny because we're always telling our clients hey, you should put customer stories on. I guess we have to put the caveat that it should make you look good. This ad just it was a little dystopian. It showed this woman who had suicidal tendencies and was talking to her friend and asking it, "Do you remember when I had suicidal ideations?" I think the concept behind it was let's show the people that friend is actually helping. But for me, it just showed how isolated she was and had become, and how the friend was also enabling that further by making her more isolated and thinking that if you can talk to this AI necklace, you have a friend. And Nic, did you see this ad? What did you think?
I did see this ad. I did find it fairly disturbing, to be honest with you. The depiction of someone who clearly is in an isolated state first, but secondly is dealing with profound mental health issues, to the point where she actually has a seizure and is in
Right.
hospital and is talking to this device. It's difficult watching. It's difficult watching. And there is a little clip in the ad where she's actually talking to a couple of people in a parking lot, and they're older women, and they're asking her if the device can match a real life friend. And the woman is saying, well, I don't really have many friends, and this thing is always with me. It's communicative. It is there in the middle of the night, early in the morning. It's an always on kind of friend. So that attachment to a device, and I'm not a therapist, but have had enough therapy to know that attachment, which can be, anxious, and it can be avoidant, but in this case, it looks like it's anxious attachment to something that is feeding you, giving you attention, there for you, is addictive.
Yeah.
It's very scary to think, as much as we are already addicted to our devices, that there is something that can even supersede that, because you're literally wearing it on you at all times. So yeah, not a great advert for it.
Yeah,
I have to
which is
say.
funny because this is the third in a series that they've done, and their previous ads haven't reached this level of attention, but they've also been similar in kind of the scope and kind of showing other lonely people that are using the friend, maybe not to this extent or in this way, but certainly not really showing the company to, the best of its ability. I remember the first ad that came out, it seemed more aspirational, and this just seemed so sad, and it's not judgment on her at all. It's, I guess just a question to us and society that, we've gotten to this point that, the loneliness epidemic, is becoming, I don't know. It's almost like it becomes acceptable because you have this thing around your neck that you can talk to when you are feeling lonely, and not reaching out to another human.
That's a great point, though. That's a great point, Sonia, is that it's accepting the
Hmm.
epidemic. Um, it's not really trying to help. And also, I think
Hmm.
the casting of this main woman is incredibly problematic.
Yeah.
Um,
I
because
mean, the fact that they left the footage of the seizure and her at the hospital, it seems as if they were taking advantage, right? And of course, obviously, I'm sure she signed the release, but if she has nobody else to stand up for her and tell her, hey, maybe this is taking advantage of you, then, of course she's going to, sign that away. It's surprising that the company would include that or leave that in there as part of her story, because it
and
makes them look like they're taking
yeah,
advantage of somebody.
And I do think, unfortunately, by nature of the internet, it's going to open her up
Mhm.
to a lot of
Yeah.
haters saying, well, no wonder you're lonely, you
Mhm.
know, which
Yeah.
which I think is a very problematic choice,
Yeah.
they've done. So, you can understand the message that they're trying to get across, but
Mhm.
it's not landing, and it's deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's most of what I saw on my my feed was that it was mostly uncomfortable. I'm not sure anybody thought it was a good ad or saw a positive spin to it. So, you know, yeah, but it's not the only AI company that's facing backlash this week
Oh,
and
no.
last. I want to move on over to talking about the Chat GPT and Department of War and versus Anthropic. So basically, Anthropic let everybody know they were having a difference of opinion with the Department of War and Pete Hegseth. Basically, they didn't agree to how Claude was going to be used by the government. So they, made it public, and we're having this conversation online on Twitter specifically, where people were choosing sides, and you were just debating basically like, what do you want an AI company to allow the government and the U.S. military to do? And Anthropic came out very forcefully saying that there's two clauses. We want them to agree before we actually let them, work with Claude. And the government said no. And at the time, Sam Altman came out and said that he was in support of Anthropic. Um, so it seemed like here we have like the two main companies that are popular that we know, OpenAI and Anthropic, and they're standing up for us, the consumer, against the government. The Anthropic deal, goes away, and all of a sudden, Sam Altman announces that they are now stepping in to fulfill the contract that Anthropic and Claude are stepping away from. It was within hours, which, made people question, like, wait, how long had this been happening? Had Sam, caused this to happen? And then the contract says that the Department of War can use OpenAI's tech for all lawful purposes, which is, the clause that Claude was trying to push back against. And said that even that some forms of mass surveillance were legal. Sam later admitted that the deal was definitely rushed and that the optics didn't look good, and announced that he would be doing an AMA on Twitter. And that also didn't go very well because he started getting pushback, from people stepping in, asking like, how is this possible? What did you agree to? And then it led to a mass exodus of people leaving the platform. So as of today, about 1.5 million users have quit OpenAI and ChatGPT, which is crazy to think about. And since then, Sam and OpenAI are kind of trying to walk back what happened. It ended up being a communications failure for me. So would love your thoughts, Nick. I know that this is kind of like in your wheelhouse in terms of like the cultural aspects. So yeah, would love to know what your thinking behind this like PR disaster was.
Um, the over-explaining thing, I think, is at the heart of it, is
Mhm.
in the gold rush that is this whole AI situation, the founders are so keen to be first with everything, first to ship, that in going after those goals so aggressively, the long tail of the communications isn't catching up fast enough.
Mhm.
So then they're having to kind of over explain and put all of this energy into explaining when they haven't actually worked out
Mhm.
what all the implications are. And I think that's the tip of the spear here in the way things are coming out, because desperate to announce as quickly as it possible and beat the other guy, and not really taking much appreciation for the fact that what they are saying at the time they're saying it has deep ramifications, and all of the waves of commentary and feedback and analysis that is happening around this. It's then they're coming out with another message, so it is
Mhm.
such a muddle of messaging at the same time,
Mhm.
at a time where people are trying to make intelligent choices
Mhm.
about what tools to use and make intelligent choices about their privacy.
Mhm.
So And I think, again, there's a little bit of psychology here in the culture, is that someone who has to talk that much about it, it's, the lady doth protest too
Yeah.
much a little bit, you know?
Exactly. I definitely think there's that. There's also just the battle that was happening on Twitter, how the optics are like working out, and everyone's like digging around for clues and Easter eggs, right? They want to find that like gotcha. And sure enough, as more information kind of came out, it was revealed that, the deal wasn't different than the Anthropic Claude one that, they had staunchly opposed and that Sam Altman had said he was in favor of. So it just seemed very like, slimy and like backstabby. So it doesn't surprise me that people are like leaving, leaving the platform.
And just from what you've described, what does that remind you of, Sonia, that behavior? Because in that thing you've just described there, take the names out, and the situation is exactly like a couple of beauty influencers going at it.
Mm,
And, the showing the receipts, and I said this first, and no, you didn't, and here's why, and all the rest of it. And this is Secretary of Defense and two massive billionaire AI company owners.
mhm,
And they're behaving in a way that is, this is not only mass surveillance and national security, this is people's information, their livelihoods. People
mhm.
are putting everything into these models.
Right.
Um, so to have a little bit of a bitch slap fight on social media about it is,
Yeah, I think that's definitely been the thing, and as more like what you were saying, the more that he tries to explain it and say what's happening, and then the more he gets caught in the lie, the worse that it becomes, right? Because now people are looking at every single tweet. These are things now that he's going to continue having to face. These are questions he's going to get every single time. Another thing here, that kind of happened in light of the Iran conflict. I wonder how much the administration and, Hegseth pushed the timeline forward to even, remove the at least the to make it seem as if they had taken the time to review a contract and do a different one. The timeline was like squashed together, and then there was no room for like Altman and OpenAI to even try to say that like, oh, we did take time to like, look at the contract and see what changed. But because it was like it went from one day to the next, that it got rid of all the plausible deniability that he could have had. And obviously that's something that, the government and Hegseth don't care about. They don't care about the optics about, working with OpenAI, or having, Sam Altman and the company, come across as looking good to like the American public. They just care about winning, right? So the fact that they were able to get an AI company that is, pretty much number one right now, right? Like out of all the AIs, that's the most popular, the most well known, and get it to sign the contract that another one had spurned, it seems like a win. And then to just like push them into this, role of like having to protect, it kind of drew the tension away from, the Department of War and Hegseth, right? So on their part, they're like, well, we got what we wanted, left OpenAI and Altman to like the wolves, having to explain themselves to everybody, the tech community, to their users, and figure out like what, they were going to do going forward. So a couple lessons here. The sequencing matters, especially when you're in crisis mode. As much as you can, you're trying to, make it seem as if you're actually thinking things through and that you're explaining things properly. Sometimes instead of over explaining, it's better to explain less because that leaves more question for people to go in there and ask, well, why did you say this when clearly meant this? Instead of giving people the room to, question all these things, because you're acting like it's a debate, as opposed to, something that you're announcing, people feel more betrayed than if you had just said that, like, hey, this is what we're doing and how we're moving forward. By giving people a chance to push back, it almost seems as if you might change your mind. And that clearly wasn't going to happen here. Though, we'll see what happens now that, 1.5 million people have left the platform in protests, right? Um, And then also, here's another example of Anthropic getting, marketing for their products, right? The day after they announced that they weren't going to be working with the government, it became the number one app in the App Store, right? Because people
Wow.
were, shouting it out and saying like, hey, this is the new AI that you have to use. So, without spending any dollar on marketing, which, they did for the, the Super Bowl, which didn't go in their favor. Here you have, people finding out what Anthropic is, realizing that they prefer it, that, hey, they're sticking up for us, in front of the government. So it made it seem as if they were, the David against the Goliath of the government, and then OpenAI, right? So it just like made them look way, way good this whole time. So those are, a couple lessons to think about when hopefully none of the companies that we're talking to here find themselves in this mode. But if you do, here are things to think about going forward.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on at a jaunty angle here because I find the whole timing and what's been said and, you know, suddenly a lot of people jumping across to Claude very interesting because Dario from Anthropic was on Meet the Press 3 days ago,
Hmm.
and he made no bones about the fact that Anthropic leans forward into working with the Department of War.
Hmm.
And they were the first to integrate technologies, and the fact that they're still working with the Department of War. So he's hedging his bets there big time.
Well, so they have
And
the 6 months contract that they have to finish out,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and the Iran conflict was run through Claude, that came out yesterday. So clearly,
And I've
there's.
seen a lot of push pieces
Hmm.
in LinkedIn, across social media, which just the way they're written and the way they're pushed out, leads me to believe that they're paid shills.
Hmm.
Um, so there's definitely a concerted campaign that Anthropic is doing at the moment and clearly winning. So,
Hmm.
it's going to be interesting to see what OpenAI and ChatGPT come back with, because in
Hmm.
my mind now, and you talk about it on a brand level, these are brands, kind of in conflict with each other. And they're doing it not through kind of slanging matches, hasn't got to that point yet,
Hmm.
but they're doing it through this kind of discreet, well, we have some morals and values and principles
Hmm.
and you don't, kind of PR war.
Hmm.
Um, and what really hangs in the balance is the privacy and
Hmm.
surveillance of it, not just one nation, but many nations.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there's just a lot of kind of look over here misdirection
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Well, awesome.
My first one up is AMC Theatres. So as a bit of background, AMC has introduced premium seating for A-list and Stubs members. And what this looks like in practice is it looks like it's going to be pretty much kind of center of the center within AMC Theatres, and with your existing subscription, you will have this premium seating. Now, it's caused quite a bit of backlash because, for people who are not VIP or Stub members, who already find going to the cinema a bit of a chore, if not just too expensive.
Hmm.
They're now like, oh, right, now there's even a tiered system within cinemas, and aren't cinemas supposed to be for everybody? And putting in this tiered thing, it's like, really realistically, what's next? Dynamic pricing? Um, it could happen.
Hmm.
And in the ongoing, very vibrant conversation about the future of cinema, um, it's a big source of focus for folks at the moment. And there's been a lot of call on in the comments about, yes, there are some pretty happy subscribers that like the fact that they'll be able to get a better seat all the time. But the majority that I've seen is really kind of, this is now turning into like the concert system where
Hmm.
tickets are really expensive. They're only for the privileged, the people can afford them, and the rest of us schmoes kind of get what's left, which I think is a very valid argument. But then there's been a lot of support for the independent cinemas, the landmarks, the Alamo draft houses, independent theaters in different cities. So it's an interesting thing for AMC. I think the wider problem with all of this, and from a marketing perspective, is that, okay, bring in, you're going to give some extra benefits to some subscribers, and that's the subscriberization, subscriberification, too long a word, of everything, right? Where you can't just do a one and done. It's always, string it out as long as possible. But that might be value. But what's at the heart of it is the experience at the AMC warranting that kind of pricing and tiered system coming in. And I would hazard the argument that it's not, because it's all very well having premium seating, but if the experience you're delivering to your audience is not top notch, and let's face it, the experience at AMC is not top notch, then kind of what's the point? Now, there are two examples where this has been done successfully. I mean, Alamo Drafthouse, you have what can be viewed as a premium experience. You can order food and drink from your chair. It is a big, soft chair with a footrest on it. It is a more premium experience, and it's a smaller theater, so it feels more intimate. And the no phones allowed, makes it an even better experience. In Australia, they have a thing called Gold Class at Hoyt Cinema, which is a fully catered experience with its own bar, and you have wait service, and you can order a couple of times within the movie, but there is a separate bar for it. It costs a lot more, and you know what you're getting, but the entire experience is thought about rather than just a block of seating in a cinema. So how does the experience get better for everybody? And then what is the added value you're giving to people who are paying a bit more for a subscription to this thing? And if that's the way you want to go, why don't you kind of demarcate the kind of cinemas you have? So if you want all premium cinema people in one theater and you've got general tickets, $5 Tuesdays in another, why not do that rather than maybe build resentment within a cinema for movie nights when you've already got problems with people coming in, being on their phones, throwing, yes, audience interaction for Minecraft aside, but being more unruly in a cinema setting. It's an interesting move that AMC has made.
Yeah. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, this makes sense from a marketing thing. Because it's funny, because it's like we've talked about this on this podcast before. It's like, how do you create um, tiers for your consumer, right? To make, the ones that are like, actively purchasing your product, participating, and reward them with something. Versus everybody else. And this is a way to do that, right? Like they have the A-list, right? So that you can see movies, 3 times a week. You can get order through the app and do all that. And then they have the Stubs member, which is, the free tier, but it's still just like, their club. I was surprised actually that they're including the Stubs members in this and not just making it the A-list. Probably because they don't have that many. So I'm seeing this as a way to try to push people into being Stubs members and A-list, which kind of opens them up to, bigger avenues of being able to market directly to people through the app, because now we have your name, we have your information, we know what you like, we know what movies you like, and not just, have anonymous people, coming to the movies. The other thing is kind of them admitting that people aren't going to the movies anymore. So we have to reward the people that are coming, right? Instead of the one-off people that come once every 6 months or, once a year. I think the latest stats show that people only see, one movie a year, or two at most. So, kind of seeing this outrage and like the outpouring of like, people saying like, well, what happens to all the normal people? Well, normal people aren't going to the movies, right? So it's like AMC needs to change something in order to try to get more people to come. The other thing that I do agree with is that they do need to start improving what a, A-list or premium experience is, right? Is it enough that it's only, like the three movies a week? Maybe seating is like that, next big thing. I do agree also that the, letting people be on their phone and like how loud people are is a problem. But I also see this being as a way of saying, hey, like we now have these customers paying for a luxury premium experience. It will make it easier to then throw out the people that aren't, or are, behaving unruly in the theater. And then the other thing that it made me realize is that, oh, they're kind of moving to the airplane model, right? Where it's like even Southwest has gotten rid of the open seating, right? Now everything is you got to pay for your seat, So I do think they are going to head into the direction of paying for, better seats and, having those like dynamic pricing for like movies. And one thing I had, I talked about, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, was like maybe they start changing what the pricing is for like premiere movies or like weekend movies versus like during the week, right? Let's bring back that, $5 Tuesday and like have, once a movie has been in the theater long enough, like start lowering the prices in order to try to entice people to come back or come to the theater. Like they have to do something. I don't know that this is the correct thing, the first thing that you're going to do. But it really does seem as if, that K-shaped economy is affecting all industries, right? The airline industry, which I think it was United or Delta just announced that they have the longest premium economy seating on an airplane, that had ever been, right? So they're reducing the number of economy seats, and then stretching out the first class, business class, and the premium economy seats in order to get more people to pay for more room in the airplane and have a more premium experience where you're actually not really changing very much else
Oh,
except for adding more of the seats in there, right? But people are paying up, right? Which shows that there is room for that to work as a system. And I think, that's what they're going to try here. Which kind of sucks because yes, movie theaters should be for everybody, but it's increasingly getting more and more expensive. And if it's not actually providing a value to people, then like they're just going to keep losing people. So I think there does need to be some, rebalance of a more premium experience, yes, but then also fixing the more common, movie theaters. I like what you said about like, what can you do? Like maybe separate out IMAX completely, and like the Dolby Premium and like the, laser shows, right? Like AMC is doing a lot with those, right? Like it's building more IMAX theaters. In cities that aren't just LA, So like that's a step in the right direction. And those movies already cost more, right? Like those movies are almost $40 to go watch, Um, but you get them, at the regular price for if you're on A-list, right? So that's the thing where it's like, they're trying to test things out. Marketing wise, it makes sense because people want to feel like things are exclusive and they're being given, things that, other people don't get. But whether this is the right move at the right time now, I don't know. Do you know when this is supposed to happen?
it's having a mental blank at the moment. If
Mhm.
it's not immediate, then
Okay.
it's happening in the next month.
Okay.
I think the lesson for me here is fix the overall
Yeah.
experience first. What makes I mean, one, we're dealing with, the so-called decline in cinema attendance. Yes, I'm not a denier, it's definitely there, but we've got a lot of things in play here. We've got franchise fatigue.
Mhm.
We've got, reboot after reboot after reboot being made, and people looking for the new and the unusual, hence why Marty Supreme has been such a massive,
Mhm. I mean,
massive
Project Hail
success.
Mary is already gonna have one of the highest openings of this year, and I mean, it's based on a book, and, an author who has previously had a movie, The Martian, but it's gonna be, a new sci-fi that doesn't have existing IP,
Yeah.
and that seems to have, people excited about it,
But
but yeah.
from ticket purchase to the moment your butt goes in the seat, I mean, my
Mhm.
local AMC is Century City, which is
Mhm.
an upscale shopping mall.
Mhm.
And you walk across the threshold of the AMC and you are in 1982 world
Yeah.
boring. The staff are exhausted, clearly don't want to be there,
It
not
seems like they
really
don't have enough staff either.
uniform. They don't have enough staff. And then you go downstairs into the concession area and it's all, say hi, sugar sweets. So by the time you get into the movie theater, you've had a pretty disappointing experience. And then you get in there, and you don't know what crowd you're gonna get, whether they're gonna be respectful and watch the movie or whether they're gonna use it just as a hangout.
Mhm,
And so if you haven't fixed all of that, it's kind of what's the point of putting a premium experience within that?
mhm,
Um, so I think they need to be looking, for me, the lesson is they need to be looking more holistically about the experience design of an AMC theater and placing their pricing strategy within that experience redesign.
mhm. Yeah, the one of the lessons for me is you do need some sort of, premium versus, regular experience that's happening everywhere. But is this the right one? It
Right.
kind of seems like they, chose this, as something that could be a good thing. And I'll say, like, I am an A-list, member, and like sitting in the middle is not a preferred thing for me, right? So like who chose this as like the main thing? Like that doesn't, to me, scream a premium experience. Fix the menu, fix people not being able to, be on their phones, being, on the light, kick them out the way that they do at like Alamo Draft House. I don't know where they got their data or what research they did to, choose this, but it doesn't really make sense. And the fact that they got all this backlash goes to show that it wasn't the right one. So honestly, I mean, I think they should walk it back because I don't know who it was popular with. And then figure out what other premium experience they can do in order to fix the overall, experience. And I think even starting to do some like dynamic pricing would probably make more sense to me than doing the, premium seating. But we'll see. Something has to be done with theaters because I love the theaters. I want them to continue existing. But this doesn't really make sense for me as a way to save them.
No. No, and on the back of the Nicole Kidman campaign,
Yeah.
it's kind of they're not getting it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So funny. I heard or I saw a tweet today that said that she did that pro bono during COVID to get people to come back. So she wasn't even paid for that. She just did it for love of the movies. So Queen of Hollywood there, that it has become a cultural touch point and like a meme almost, right? So the other fail that I want to talk about is the McDonald's CEO promoting the product Big Arch.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So McDonald's CEO Kempczynski posted a video where he's tasting the new Big Arch burger, and it went viral not because it was good, but because he calls the burger the product. He takes the tiniest bite imaginable, and it looks like he didn't actually want to take a bite. And that could have been just he's uncomfortable eating in front of the camera. But instead, it came across as like he doesn't wanna eat the burger that he's trying to get us to eat, you
You
know?
don't even see him swallow it. There's a
I know.
cut.
Okay. And then he looks visibly uncomfortable and he says, "I don't even know how to attack it," which just made it seem as if you don't eat your own product. You don't eat McDonald's and you're trying to promote it by doing this, like, video. And the only thing I could think of is like, oh my god, the marketer that like got him to do this and convinced him, didn't then take that next step to be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't post this, or maybe let's re-record and here are the things that you need to like work on. Don't call the burger a product. Don't look like you're gonna throw up when you're eating it. Swallow the goddamn burger and then make it look like you're happy that you're eating a McDonald's burger. For it to get to that point where the CEO has agreed to do this and then to allow it to go out, just like a mistake on like monumental like level for me. I don't want it to seem like I'm blaming only the marketer because at a company the size of McDonald's, it takes levels of approval for it to
Sure.
finally go out, right? And nobody along the way said like, "Hey, this video isn't good, you know? Is this the end of founder-led comms, right? Like, this whole idea that has taken over in like the tech industry and, spilling into other industries clearly is like, hey, let's get our leadership to get on, comms and videos and TikToks and like social media. Let's, show their personality. And maybe not every CEO has that aura, has that, personality to put through, right? Um, and I want to put this up against Burger King because they just posted their CEO taking a big bite out of their burger and showing personality, right? And one of the things that someone pointed out was that the Burger King CEO rose through the ranks, right? Like he started as a Domino's pizza delivery driver and then, moved into Burger King and then worked his way up. Whereas the McDonald's CEO came from like the MBA track and then, was put into the CEO role because, of his, experience. And I felt like it was just one of those like cultural differences of like someone who like genuinely likes fast food and is like, building the product around that with Burger King. And then someone who's like, it's a job, it's a CEO, I have the skills to be able to do this. I'd be able to do this anywhere, It doesn't matter that it's McDonald's. And that's kind of what came across is that it didn't matter that it's McDonald's. So yeah, Nick, I know that you saw this video because it went viral. Everybody was talking about it, but I would love to know, your thoughts and like the cultural context that you saw.
Yeah. I think it's one of the greatest demonstrations of the fact that, a brand is not a person.
Yeah.
A brand is not a person. Because a person has character and
Mhm.
personality and, facial tics and movements and, micro expressions and all of that. There was none of that. Um, and from the setting behind him, a boring corporate bland office, which literally had the word petty just behind him, which I thought was interesting. Obviously the room name or something.
How
Um,
funny.
but, also the way he's dressed, um, very, I'm gonna use
Corporate.
the word stuffy.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously a very put together, controlled guy,
Mhm.
and, not clearly not the kind of guy who would eat fast food, and he
Mhm.
doesn't eat it. Takes a tiny bite, there's a cut, I think he probably spat it out. Um, and then the way he's holding it, like, you haven't touched, you know
Burger in a really long time.
And it just shows that, the fallacy of building a brand. It's like we're a brand for everybody and it's about the people and cheap food and yet the CEO, like, it might as well have been shot in an ivory tower, you
Mhm.
know. Um it brought a smile to my face because the whole, calling it product, the fact that nothing else on that tray is touched either.
Mhm.
No fries, he doesn't take a sip of the drink, so really how is it part of your lunch? Um, and that for a little bit of McDonald's cultural history, that video was 45 seconds and he struggled to describe the product, the burger, nibbled around the edges of it. Whereas from the 1970s to the 1990s, one of the most successful marketing campaigns that McDonald's ever did to drive traffic into store was they had a 5 to 7 second challenge where if you went in and said, "To all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, all on a sesame seed bun," you'd get a Big Mac for free. Now they revived that in 2024 in Australia, and apparently it did really well. But you think about it, is you asked your customers, McDonald's, to recite the precise ingredients in a Big Mac for 20 years, and it was incredibly successful for you. Fast forward to 2026, and your CEO can't even describe the burger in 45 seconds, let alone eat it. So, and then you think about the angle of, was it an attempt to humanize the CEO? Well, it failed on that level, I think.
Yeah. I feel like
And
authenticity
finally,
only works if you're kind of like in on the joke, and he didn't seem in on the joke.
No.
that was, like, the miss for me because it's like, he seemed like he was trying. It's like, you can try and then, like, look like you're failing, look like you're not eating the burger right, you could do all that, but the trying came across as, like, you're trying to eat the burger and not that, like, you're trying to do social media and you're making fun of yourself because you know you're gonna look like an idiot, and that's okay because that's authentic. Those are authentic vibes that people like to see, right? Because it's hard to get on camera. I wanted to call out this other story, that Ray Kroc, who, you know, was the I mean, he wasn't the original McDonald's owner, but the one that, you know, built out the franchise model, used to drive around unannounced to McDonald's and eat their burgers a couple times a day, to make sure that, like, the product tasted the same at all the restaurants, right? It's also, like, made me realize that, like, oh, of course the CEO decided to okay that AI ad for McDonald's that came out in the holiday that, like, also did really poorly. Another thing that went viral was somebody posted the Shamrock Shake, right? And it was like this neon green ice cream that, like, hadn't even been blended in, and it didn't have, like, the Oreos in it. There's all these, like, little mistakes that are, like, coming out that are ruining the integrity of the brand that, like, Ray Kroc, the original, like, franchise builder, would never have allowed, and you're allowing them and slowly deteriorating the brand.
Well, I think the interesting flip side of this, and I'm absolutely convinced that SNL will be doing a sketch on this,
Oh yeah,
um,
completely.
is that it's almost I looked up, how many calories this thing has, and this big arch burger, it has over 1,000 calories, which is more than an entire Big Mac meal. Right?
Oh my god.
This thing was a cult hit in, the Netherlands and a
Mhm.
few other European territories, and, they bought it back for this limited time in the States, but also it's not a very ringing endorsement from your CEO if he's not cramming that thing into his mouth and going,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is
Mhm.
delicious," and also the words he used were so weird, squelchy. Like, it might as well be, like, floppy and saggy.
Moist.
Like, boy,
So
yeah,
funny.
it
Okay, so a
was
couple lessons to be learned from me are, if your CEO can't convincingly use your product or eat the burger on camera, do not use it. Find somebody else in the company that's ride or die for the burger and have them film themselves eating the burger. Another thing, do not use corporate language. It just doesn't sound welcoming. Have somebody outside, you know, somebody normal read the script before, you know, you run it up the pipeline. And then a shout out to Martin O'Leary here, but the designated hater would have caught this. So this is a concept of having somebody in the company that, like, is paid to tell you, hey, this isn't a good idea. Like, let's maybe rethink this. Because this would have, you know, gotten caught here, and I think they would have killed the whole video because, or at least had them redo it in a way that made both the CEO, but then also the product, the burger, look good. Okay.
yeah, mine would be, "Don't try to be folksy when you're not."
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's a good one.
yeah. Yes, so, H&M have just released their new campaign, it's called New York. The campaign is a series of shots of influencers, creatives, artists, and others, some who are born and raised New Yorkers, some of whom are transplants. The whole thing is about being a New Yorker and the feeling of New York and self expression, freedom of self expression. So, you know, I think they're really kind of trying to lean into Mamdani's New York, right? It is a place where all nationalities can come together and they all mush together in this great cosmopolitan city. That's a excellent, you know, very culturally relevant place to be. Where I think it falls down is that, you know, H&M is a Swedish company. So
Mhm.
what is the link for them in New York? Why have they done that? Um, and also, there really isn't, other than the sound bites, the vox pops that the talking heads are doing about the feeling of self-expression in New York, that's intercut with all of these people on stark white backgrounds. And then all you really see of New York is as though you're on a subway going really fast and there's, buildings going past you from a subway window. It just seems to me that if you're going to talk about self-expression and the interconnection of people, you want to show that in your background as well, because New York is nothing but a riot of color and texture
Mhm.
and people. So that I think they've lost that. Maybe it is part, though, of a series where they're doing this in different countries
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
and different cities, and they want a consistent template. Yeah. What I think they have done very well, though, and they've done it in a previous few campaigns as well, is multi-generationality. So they have everyone from Paloma Elisa is in it, John Turturro, Ice Spice, Karine Rama from Subway Takes, and Corteza Starr, who's a rapidly rising DJ and model. Um, and that multi-generationality where you've got Gen Z, I think a couple of Gen Alpha, Millennial, and Gen X together in an ad is a brilliant move. H&M, yes, it is a youth-oriented store, but that doesn't mean that people from other generations can't rock H&M clothing. The reaction at the moment is a lot of comments saying a lot of these people aren't even New Yorkers. So New Yorkers coming for the fact that it's a New York ad. A lot of people coming for Ice Spice, like this is the only thing she's reduced to now is doing brand deals. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm interested to see if they do this kind of treatment to other cities and unexpected cities because, New York is New York. We all know it's a creative city. What about cities like Nashville, which are up and coming creative hubs? The changing face of the Miami and the Austin scene and what's happening there with finance and tech, could be a one and done. But it's just interesting why they chose New York and it being a Swedish company as well. That interests me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like New York is having a moment, right? The Marty Supreme movie was like heavily like New York heavy, and that was kind of a focus of the, Timothy Chalamet campaign, and then Zora Mamdani. So it seems like the stock for New York is rising, but I do think that like it would work better if they showed more of New York, right? Like show them in New York being New Yorkers, right? Were they even in New York, or is this like at a studio, you
Well,
know?
exactly.
um so then it's like, oh, you just chose a city for like no reason, you know? H&M is also kind of losing its, appeal, I think, fashion wise. I don't really hear it being mentioned anymore. Forever 21 is completely gone now. So this is another like fast casual brand that like maybe is trying to like switch who they're going after because to compete against the Sheens of and the Depops of the worlds that are now just fully online and are the places that people go to for like even cheaper fast fashion, right? Where does H&M fit now amongst all these brands that are coming for it, and I don't know that this necessarily makes a strong attempt at showing who they are as a brand, you know?
Yeah, they are not as prevalent as they used to be, but since back end of last year, I mean, H&M did an immediate sellout collection with Glenn Martens. They've just opened a store in Beverly Hills. So they're following the Zara playbook of them being a fast fashion retailer, but they're positioning themselves in the luxe
Mhm.
territory. I think this is trying to, continue that comm strategy. But as we're both saying, the contextual situation that they're actually talking about being New York um, needs to come up more. And I think they need to let more of this. I mean, you can't have everybody I think there's you know, 18 to 20 different models shown in their kind of, standing still shot. And there's only like 4 or 5 that are actually talking. Um, it would be good to make to make sure that all of those voices are talking at different times because it is interesting points of view of where their background is, where their home countries are. And as I say, the main lesson to me that I think they have gotten very right here is showing multiple generations
Mhm.
together from Gen X to Gen Alpha is a very, very smart move, and one that other brands should take a big notice out of.
Just the diversity as well, right? You
Of
had a
course,
range of, races and ethnicities and,
and
I
identities.
yeah, and identities, kind of bringing that up in, like, New York where, you see that, right? Like, that's kind of like you're walking down the street and that's who you see. You see, anybody and everybody, right? So I think that aspect of it, was a win for me. So a lesson there of like, who is your target customer? And how are you trying to appeal to them? Okay, awesome. So let's go through the takeaways, the timeline of like how you're putting things out. Like really think about like are we doing this correctly, like with the OpenAI thing, like just the timeline of it ended up bringing up more questions than it had to, because it was kind of rushed through. It didn't give people time, a chance to like look. It seems as if it didn't even give Sam Altman a chance to like look through everything that like they were signing before they like signed it, said that they were doing it, and then rushed through everything, and then had to come back and try to allay people's fears by giving throwing in the AMA, and then that also seemed to be like a rush job through. So sometimes take the time to, really think about like what it is that what you're agreeing to, and then what you want your consumer to do, because the way that it was kind of rushed through made people just like m- seem as if it isn't actually a trustworthy brand, which is a huge thing that you need for like AI and like privacy. That's a huge thing that people are like thinking about right now. We saw that with the Ring deal. We're seeing this with this now, right? Privacy and security are like super hot topics right now. So you kind of have to like make sure that you know where you fit in with those.
Yeah, definitely. I think the takeaway with AMC is um, redesign the experience
Mhm.
overall. If a seating premium is to be charged for your members, then make that premium charge and premium seating part of a better experience for everybody. So that not only you're increasing your, hopefully trips to the cinema by all people, but when they get there, you're encouraging people who may not have a membership to buy one because the experience is superior. So see it more holistically rather than just a pricing yank.
Mhm. Definitely. There's definitely a need for premium experiences. We're seeing that across all industries. It's something people have come to expect. But if you're not actually providing a premium experience, then what are you making people pay for? Show people why it's worth a premium experience and premium pricing, and then build out ways to separate out what a club member gets versus everybody else.
Yeah.
For McDonald's, the big thing here for me is like, as much as you're trying to be authentic, people can see through that if you're not actually, being authentic, right? I think this was meant to be like a fun video of like, hey, the CEO's like gonna eat McDonald's, but instead it came across as like he's never eaten a McDonald's burger in his life, or even worse, he has and he doesn't eat them anymore, you know? But I am liking that other brands are taking advantage of this and, showing that they do in fact eat their eat their product. So the Burger King one, the fact that they came out and, had the CEO do that and his personality came across is a good, good for that brand. And I see other people saying like, "Hey, Taco Bell, let's see what you're going to do, with your CEO," right? So I think it's giving people a chance to jump in on the meme. And I think this one is probably going to do, pretty well, depending on if your CEO can actually be authentic on camera.
Yes. Yeah. And don't try and humanize a brand when that's just not how your company is built.
Yeah.
And don't try and seem folksy when you're absolutely not. My takeaway with the H&M campaign is show us the landscape. We are desperate to get back out there. Real life experiences is what everybody is talking about, the need to get away from our devices. And even though this is an advertising campaign that is being put out on digital channels, showing the place that you're talking about is a place of self-expression. You need to show that self-expression in situ. and give people more of a flavor of it. But the other lesson there is lean into multi-generationality. Make really valuable and great use of it, because you'll attract a lot more people than you think. And it's not going to be divisive for youth or for older generations. They're going to welcome it. That there's a more intergenerational connection between people expressed through fashion than there isn't.
Yeah, and then my takeaway is, if you're gonna lean full into a theme or a city, go in on it, right? This made it seem as if they actually weren't in New York,
Right.
that they're just like in a studio somewhere that could have been anywhere. Kind of like, the movies that are like, say the city is New York, but it's Toronto in the back. Like, people can like suss that out. And like with the, McDonald's thing, like authenticity really matters here. And I think they could have done a little bit more, like people riding bikes city, people actually taking the subway, like put people really in the moment so that it really seems as if you're talking about New York. Um, well, thank you so much, Nick, for joining
Well,
me. Please let people know how they can find you.
yes, you can find me at LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Nic Allum. And you can also find me on Substack at cultureland.substack.com.
Awesome. And then you can follow me at Sonia Baschez everywhere and the podcast at Mean Team Pod on YouTube and Mean Team Podcast on Spotify and TikTok. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.